Charles Leonard Gallop and the New Organ of 1881. If you go into almost any church in England, one thing you will expect to see is a church organ. They are generally impressive instruments of some size with a large array of pipes and a complex keyboard with foot pedals and stops to change the tone and sound of the instrument. Most organs in parish churches were installed in the 19th century to support the growing use of music and singing in services. Previously, the only places you would be likely to find such organs would be in abbeys, cathedrals and royal chapels, where they were large and literate choirs able to understand and follow complex harmonious anthems or chants. In parish churches, the services were simply read out with people joining in with the responses. Sometimes the psalms and other sections were chanted. But while church services were pretty dull, elsewhere things were on the move. In particular, the Methodists enlivened their chapel services with hymns which started to creep into services in Anglican churches too. When Henry Thomas Ellacombe, a new young curate, arrived in Bitton in 1817, he had distinct ideas about the conduct of services and music. He also had the benefit of the composer Robert Purcell, who lived at Willsbridge, and who developed a choir for him, writing music specifically for the choir to sing. He was fortunate there was an organ in the church already, which had been built in 1812 and was located on a gallery at the rear of the church. It was not a large organ, but it was good enough for its time, and as the custom in those days was for the singers also to be located in the gallery, it provided close accompaniment. Ellacombe was succeeded as vicar by his son, also called Henry, who continued his father's pattern of church development, and by the 1860s he was making changes with the view to modernising the church. One of these was the demolition of the West Gallery, and it seems likely that this also entailed the removal of the organ to a new location. That organ of 1812 survived and exists today. It is currently in use at the University of Plymouth in Devon. But by the 1870s, more modern organs were much more sophisticated, and a decision was made to raise the money for a new one. An appeal was made for funds, and subscribers soon came forward with a new organ dedicated, with two special services on Tuesday the 20th of September 1881. This new organ was placed in the chapel, with its keyboard reaching into the nave through the arches. The organ remained in the chapel for nearly 70 years, and for much of that time Charles Leonard Gallop, who is commemorative in this plaque, was organist. Charles was my grandfather, and the church organ he played is still here, although it is now in a different place, being to the left of this memorial above the porch. This picture shows Charles Gallop playing it in the early years of the last century. Charles became the organist in 1911 at the age of 20, when he took over from Mrs. Coulson. We took him away to fight in 1914, but he returned afterwards and remained as the organist until a few months before his death in 1966. The organ was powered by hand pumps until the 1930s, but an electric air pump was later installed, the gift of the Parker family. Unfortunately, the roof of the chapel, where the organ was located, suffered from enemy action during the Second World War and afterwards. With the help of donations, the organ was moved to a new organ loft above the porch. The organ remains in the loft to this day.